Okie dokie. Scruffy Lookin RGB. I'll just call you Scruffy for short, if that's all right. How are you?
Yeah, that works. I'm good. I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Just living a dream, Are you?
Yeah. Living the dream in Japan. That's kind of, I guess, I was just sort of scrolling through your Instagram, and I noticed that I went right back to the very beginning, and your first post is July 31st, 2019, and then your first YouTube is May 25th, 2019. And I sort of, your Instagram, I love. It's that gorgeous Japanese retro gaming, just, like you said, the dream in many ways, games, consoles, general concept of being surrounded by them if you choose to. But I always come back to, like, when I watch your videos, you've got a smooth, honey-like American accent, and you're so calm and relaxed. And I guess my question when I meet someone, I've met a few, how does this person with this heavy American accent have such a deep and kind of embedded life in Japan? I'd love to hear about that. And then we can talk more about gaming.
Yeah. So, I always was interested in Japan as a kid. I mean, kind of going back to the game thing is when I got the NES as a kid, like way back in 1986. So I've always been enthralled with Japan and Japanese culture. I used to watch like Godzilla and things like that. And when I was a teenager, or when I was a kid, we watched a lot of Japanese anime, but we didn't know it was anime back then because it wasn't like a big thing, like Robotech and those kind of things, like Ultron.
Yep.
So I've always had, like, from anime stuff to when I got older into cars, I was into like Hondas and souping up Hondas and Civics and things like that. And everything always kind of Japan always has like the best products,
Yeah.
And just such a deep, rich culture that I came over here just kind of like on a secondary trip. I was going to the Philippines with some family, and on the way back, we just did a stop in Tokyo. And from that one stop, I knew I wanted to come back here. So ever since then, I was just like, it was like, I knew what I wanted to do from that point. So
how old were you then?
That's how I'm here. I was 21, I think.
Yeah, right. This is like sort of early 90s.
No, more like 2000s. 2000.
Oh, okay.
2000-ish, 2001-ish.
Yeah. And I guess Japan's always been that kind of, like it used to be a point where, something electronic or gadgety, if it was made in Japan, it was probably about as good as it got. Like if there was a watch, made in Japan, you're like, this is going to be a good watch. I think I can rely on this watch.
It's going to be top quality.
Yeah. And so from 21 and thinking I got to come back, how did you, because like you've sort of referred yourself in our conversations off that like you're Japanese. So I assume that you kind of very quickly came back, laid your roots, and that was it. That was then your home.
Yeah, I'm not Japanese. That was a joke. Just because I've been here so long. Claiming my Japaneseness.
I know plenty of people. Well, I say plenty. I know at least 3 or 4 people that, much like yourself, have spent a large part of their adult life, and you can sort of see it in them. We went to Japan in around 2018, and it's not until you sort of experience the culture where you see the difference in just general manners and mannerisms, and just the way everybody goes about their way down a street or through a shops, or gives you food, or helps you find the right platform at a train station, where in Australia the dude would be like, yeah, you just go down there, mate. Just keep going that way. Whereas when we went, we were trying to find a platform to get to Disneyland at 8:30 in the morning. And we asked the guy at the little booth there, and he shut the booth, closed the doors, and said, follow me. And that dude must have walked like 2 kilometers through all these little tunnels and stuff. And it's like that, people are polite. But anyway, so
they're
did you,
very accompanying to foreigners, especially Caucasian foreigners.
Right.
Outgoing towards it. I mean, tourism is the number one thing here. So
that's
not just tourism, but like it's part of the culture too, to be inviting. But I'd say if you're Japanese and you're in Japan, it's not quite the same experience.
Right, not as accommodating and sort of
I mean, it's
helpful.
very politeness, very like upfront politeness, not necessarily as welcoming as they are as to like foreigners. It's kind of like that's a very complex issue with like foreigners in Japan.
Yeah.
But yeah, I understand like they're very welcoming, and yeah, it feels nice when you come as a tourist for the first time.
So it's a
If
bit
you're
of a
ever there.
double-edged sword in a way, in that like we're welcome and we'd like you to come and be a tourist
Yeah,
and spend your money because that's how economies work. But at the same
right.
time, tourists, it's such a long day,
Yeah,
sort of thing.
there's
Yeah,
that too. I mean, but I think there
yeah.
is a genuine interest in other cultures here, and like travel and culture is pretty big, a
Mm,
big thing
mm,
here. So
mm, mm.
yeah, it's a nice place. I'm still here, so
Yeah, that's right.
it's a good place.
So from that little stopover at the age of around 21, early 2000s, do you mind explaining how it is that you found your way back and just kind of stayed?
Yeah, so when I first coming to Japan, or like when with the game thing,
Oh, we're just back to Japan, and then obviously
Japan.
you'll be
Okay,
like,
so
this is where I want to be. And from there, the game thing just exploded, I guess.
yeah, so I decided I wanted to be here, so I changed my major at the time to Japanese, which I didn't know was a possibility, and so I just made my way from there. I think I took a lot of Japanese classes and did a really quick 4 year degree in like 2.5 years because I really wanted to get over here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then I did a study abroad here, and then I pretty much after the study abroad, I just almost stayed. I had to go back for a little bit, find a job over here, and then I came back as like a English teacher.
Yeah,
So
right.
that was cool. I was in the JET program for a
Yeah.
few years at first, yeah,
Mm. Seems to
and
be
yeah, it was fun.
a fairly common route for people to go over and teach
Yeah,
English.
it's a really
And
good JET is a really good opportunity.
yeah,
It pays pretty well, and you get a good discount on rent and things like that. So it's very accommodating. So once experiencing that and Japan culture, I mean, I pretty much knew I was going to be here once I got here, but
hmm
that just kind of cemented it and made it very comfortable to be here.
yeah, for
So
sure, for sure. And then from there, you obviously were surrounded by, like you said, when you got the NES back in the day, you were like, I love games, I love all this stuff, and then you were then surrounded by it.
yeah,
Like,
it's just
did
I
did you kind of
when
like
I
land
first
in
came,
Tokyo?
when I first came, I wasn't really into games. It didn't come until like pretty much when I started my YouTube channel. Maybe a
Mm,
year before I started my YouTube channel, I visited a flea market in Tokyo for the first time, and I saw the Famicom, or the NES, Japanese version of the NES, and it was like very strange and weird to me because I never really thought about them or never
mm,
even thought to look at them. So
mm,
at the time, I was looking for like old Star Wars toys because I was a big collector of that when I was a kid, and I was kind of looking for nostalgia. And
mm,
instead, I found the Famicom and took it home and found out I got it to work, and it was pretty much in working condition. So that's where I kind of got the bug to start like fixing up these old consoles, and
mm,
it just gave me that nostalgic rush, and seeing the Japanese games versus the American games and seeing their differences and games that didn't release,
mm,
and I just kind of like fell into the rabbit hole and just got deeper and deeper as time went by, and
mm.
that's when I started my YouTube channel. And then a friend of mine's like, you should start Instagram too because you can advertise your YouTube channel. I was like, okay. So then I started down that hill of social media stuff because before that I didn't have any Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or anything. That I was pretty much offline at that
Mm,
point. So it
mm.
kind of threw me into everything all at once.
Yeah, right. Um, and then, so were you just kind of doing it just for the sake of it, or was there a point where you sort of went, um, because these days, everybody's like buying things and flipping things and doing AV mods or, refurbing Game Boys and then selling them with IPS screens, all that sort of stuff. Was there a point where you kind of went, I can't just go to the flea market every Saturday, buy something and keep it? Everybody knows, I think anybody that's been in Japan, I think knows that like the space that you have both in your private world and outside is limited compared to, like the average home back in the US or here in Australia. Like I have an entire room, which I assume is bigger than probably your bathroom you share with your parents, full of just stuff. So at some point you kind of go, I want to do this. I really enjoy this, but I need to start moving this stuff on. So what was your solution to that? To not just having
I'm at that point right now. I still have
oh no. Well, I mean, you've got years and years of shopping, like game hunting and refurbing and stuff. Like you probably go through your Instagram account, 50 Famicoms that you've laid your hands on. Like, surely you don't still have.
I have quite a few in my possession right now, and not enough time to do them all, right? So, there's that, and then the other games, and then the other consoles that you delve into. And I need to start selling some of them at some point. So, we have a new place, but I'm kind of worried. I kind of want to make this the point where I kind of move the stuff that I'm not really messing with very much and kind of start fresh at the new place. So working on that and working on making videos at the same time. It's kind of tough. A lot of people go into the business side of YouTube, and I kind of would like to do that more, but it's hard to juggle the two, and I'm not a business person as of the moment. So I think I do need to at least get rid of some of my stock. That's for sure. You do collect a lot of things, and I've got boxes and boxes of things that I've kind of gone through for the move, and like, well, I kind of need to get rid of some of these. So, definitely. If you need some things, I will be posting those things on Instagram or other places. So be on the lookout for Scruffy's stuff.
Scruffy stuff. Sounds like you need to be on the other side of the flea market table for a change.
I do. It would be a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I've got on the wall here, like when I picked up a Famicom off someone, and I was like, because I've got a bunch of other stuff. It's funny when you sort of get consoles, there's a point in time in the console lineage, and then I kind of move forward, right from probably Mega Drive all the way up into kind of PlayStations, Dreamcast, GameCube. Yeah. And I kind of got to that point. I was like, what am I doing now? And then I kind of went back, and all of a sudden I started going back in time, and I started picking up like Atari 2600, 7800, Famicoms, and you still sort of go further back and back, and the Mega Drive the Master System, and then when I picked up my Famicom, I picked up like just someone helped me out, someone who would buy stuff from Japan, and just bought me like 30 of the kind of generic Famicom cartridges, and I'm like making games I can play, like. Don't get me a bunch of like Japanese RPGs. I don't know what's going on. Like I want at least platformers. And he's like, this will be fine. It'll be fine. So on my wall, I printed some little brackets, and I've got about 30 of them. And just as display, like I can't really tell what most of them are. Some of them are, the Japanese version of a game. Like I've got Ghostbusters. I'm like, I know what that is. And he's like, this is this and this is that version and stuff. But just as cartridges, again, they just really kind of encapsulate that sort of 80s, 90s Japanese culture, the art, the kanji or whatever it is that's written on them and stuff. And the way the Famicom, it just has that very kind of 60s, 70s American, like, when it went to the US, the Famicom became this huge box of a NES. And you kind of go, that's just such an opportunity to look at the difference between what Japanese people accepted and what the American, it's going to be bigger, it's going to be heavier. A prime example is like the core graphics, and then when you look at the super graphics, it's like it's freaking huge, and it's exactly the same. It's just all this plastic around it, So look, I'll keep an eye out. I'm always after $20 worth of just random Famicom cartridges I can just slap on the wall and just enjoy looking at, sort of thing.
I've kind of trying to get back into from collecting every single cartridge more into like maybe the more pristine boxed, maybe a
Right.
few boxed instead of like 3,000 loose carts or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
or the 1,500 carts that they made for the Famicom, whatever it is.
Is it that many? 1,500 different cards?
Yeah, something like that. 1,000, something
Yeah.
over 1,000.
Yeah, right. That's pretty bonkers. Um, I'm not sure if I've asked you or whether you've told me, but is this sort of like, are you, it's like a multi-part question. Are you in Tokyo? And then if so, or if not, like what's your kind of like radius? Because you go game hunting all the time. A lot of your videos are that. So what's your kind of, do you just know areas, or is it part of your way of exploring the country? And because you've been there a few years now, you must have been to most of them by now.
Yeah, it's not nowhere near most of them. I mean, I've been doing this for 5 years, but I haven't gone out a whole lot. We used to travel a lot more, but after like COVID and all that, like we couldn't really travel a whole lot, and
Mm.
health in the family hasn't been that great. So
Yeah.
we haven't been getting out as much. So basically right now it's where I have time to go to, and just I'll like research and see what kind of hard offs there are over here, over there, a place that I can get to within reasonable time, because I'm sure, as you can tell, I don't have a lot of time for
Mm-hmm.
doing things because this is so difficult to like schedule things for me. And
Mm.
so I just go wherever I have the time to go and try and switch things up and make things go to different places when I can. I did recently go down to Shizuoka, which is a good hour south by a bullet train, and that was a lot of fun. I don't do that, so it was a very rare thing. So getting
Mm.
out there and checking out some places was a lot of fun because we used to go a lot more often. So
Mm.
maybe in the near future here, you'll see me go to more exotic locations. But
Mm.
yeah, as of late, I haven't really gotten more than an hour outside of Tokyo in most of my
Mm.
videos. So I just kind of will look online and see where they're located, see if they're not too far from a train station or not too far to drive to, and go out and check them out. So just a little bit of research before I go,
Mm-hmm.
usually.
Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the time you're picking up, just sort of going through carts and, and the common term amongst yourself and other people that are doing the same content is like junk. So you go to, like, sure, you can walk down the aisle of shop X and there's like, a pallet of Neo Geos in box. You're like, that's great. But I'm going to go down the back in this other aisle, which is sort of
Yeah,
baskets full of junk, like a
right.
Famicom that's clearly nicotine
Yeah,
stained and
yeah,
clearly is just had the roughest life.
yeah,
And it's going to cost you like equivalent of like $10 US or something like that.
right.
Um, when you pick up this junk, just generally, whether it be
Yeah.
a Famicom or a Game Boy or something else, what tends to be your sort of like win-loss ratio on? You just take it home and plug it in and you're like, it just looks terrible. It's actually a fully functional piece of equipment.
Yeah, it looks terrible, so I want it. Yeah, so basically, yeah. I mean, it's that nostalgic rush that you get, and the ability to like, are having the thought of like, well, if I fix this up, somebody is gonna like this, or
Mm,
it's gonna be something you can still keep on your shelf.
mm,
So it's kind of like saving something from the garbage, basically,
yeah.
and
And
that's
what's
kind
your
of
kind of ratio, do you think, of like junk? Because it's all untested, right?
the stuff that I pick up, or just the stuff that I see
Well,
in
the
the
stuff that you
junk.
pick up,
So
the stuff you
yeah,
take
so in the
home.
junk, I'd say 95, maybe it's a little low. 95% of the time, the Famicom will work. I think I've only come across one or two Famicoms that didn't work.
Mm,
So, I mean, the Nintendo made things really well,
mm,
and so they're
mm,
still. I mean, I don't know how long they're going to last, but usually this stuff is functional. I mean, CD-based things like a Sega Saturn or a
mm,
PlayStation, those are a bit more difficult to find working ones. It's not that you
right.
can't find working ones, but
Mm,
you can find working PlayStations still for like 300 yen these
right.
days.
Right. 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 Um, I saw not too long ago you stumbled across a bunch of like new old stock Virtual Boy. It's like
Yeah, new old
it must
stock
have
virtual boy games. Yeah,
that must have been like difficult to kind of just walk past and not say, I feel like I need to just save all that and put it somewhere because
yeah,
that's like the weirdest gold mine. Like it's actually kind of rubbish to most
yeah,
people because it
yeah,
gives you like headaches if you have a Virtual Boy. But at the same time, like that's the sort of stuff that someday will be the rarest and hardest to find. It's often the stuff that nobody wanted.
yeah. So I
And
think those virtual boy games, because you know how poorly the virtual boy did,
mm,
they were expecting to sell a lot of it. I would imagine. So they have that stuff somewhere in like a warehouse or whatever, and they just pull it out when they feel like it. I think is how it's done.
mm, mm,
I mean that. I mean it's just like really just all the boxes are crisp, and there's like boxes and boxes of them. And I've only been was it the Surugaya that I went to in Tokyo had a bunch of boxes of it, and then I went down to the main Surugaya shop down in Shizuoka, and they had even more.
wow.
So I don't know if there's an end to the virtual games, like seriously. But it's
Yeah.
really cool to see that stuff. I mean, I would love to see more Famicom stuff like that. But I mean, I'm sure there's a warehouse somewhere that has it. I gotta find that en road to people that own the warehouses. Maybe one day you'll see a video highlighting a warehouse in some middle of nowhere Japan.
It,
Somebody was telling me about some other, maybe a Japanese YouTuber that actually did that. That they found a bunch of Famicom stuff, like Rockman games that were
wow.
like still sealed, like 10 of them, up on other boxes of crazy rare stuff.
That's insane. It
So
reminds me a little bit of like when you. So I watch a little bit of the sort of Japanese car culture stuff. There's a couple of Americans and Australians, probably similar scenario to yourself, but very car driven,
yeah,
and they'll kind of drive out somewhere and find like an old tuner shop, and
yeah,
this tuner shop's been there for like 20 years. It just
yeah,
shut down. The old guy who was the known tuner,
yeah,
65, he retired and walked away or whatever. And so, the
right,
windows are all dusty and there's all like wheel sets in there covered in
yeah,
dust when people are like,
yeah,
oh, like that wheel set is
treasure,
thousands of dollars. And then
right,
all parked down the side of the vehicle, like outside of the building, like under a cover, is just like Civics and Imprezas and just car after car after car just sitting there
incredible,
with in different states. Some of them are just stock,
right,
some have clearly had like weight reduction done and the roll cage put in and
right,
there's a number on the door. And it's a similar scenario where Japan just seems to have this way of just sealing things up in time
right,
and then no one cares. They just kind of walk
right.
away.
It just disappears into, yeah, there's a lot of places like that here. I mean, decreasing population, the older population, or younger population decreasing and the older population is going away. And there's a lot of things like that where it's like, amusement parks get left because, they go under and
Yeah,
nobody's gonna knock it down because that costs money, right? So you've got
yeah.
this amusement park that is just hidden under jungles and jungles of just all the wildlife, and it's pretty
Mm.
crazy.
We went to an amusement park when we were in Japan. I can't remember where it was, but it was apparently like the oldest amusement park in Japan,
Oh,
and
really?
it's kind of right in the city somewhere. Like
Oh, okay.
we st-
Probably
we
Hanayashiki in
probably
Asakusa.
there was kind of like a small kind of traditional looking but clearly modern sort of shopping area next to it with all stalls and stuff. It was made to look traditional, but it was very new and everything. And there's always an arcade somewhere and a shrine
Yeah,
and things like that. And yeah, it was like pretty janky. And we played like there's like a few sort of like carnival games and things like
yeah,
that. And one of them was like throwing darts or something. And my daughter at the time
yeah,
was like 5 or 6, maybe 7. And we
yeah,
have a few goes and she's thrown the darts and she did terrible. And the consolation prize for just doing terrible was a little packet of those like candy cigarettes.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is like back in time. Like you wouldn't give
Yeah.
children these anymore. And this is probably a box of these candy cigarettes from the 70s that they've just been slowly working through, you know.
Yeah.
And she's
I
like, what are
think,
these? And we're like, they're just lollies. You know, they used to be called fags, you know, and you can't do that even anymore, sort of thing. Oh man, so good. So
yeah,
so,
those candy
so
cigarettes,
like
I think they still have them here.
yeah. I mean they must do because they were giving them out like candy. Um so what do you sort of when you're out looking these days, what are you seeing the most of? I mean I have to assume that like if you just look up Japanese game hunting, you could
Yeah.
probably find 50 channels in that first scroll of your mouse wheel of
Right.
people just picking over the carcass of just Japanese game culture. Like,
Right.
are you still sort of seeing things that are worth going out for, or do you, in the sense you've been there, you're finding like you've got to go further, I've got to dig deeper, I've
Yeah.
got
I
to be
mean,
more
there's
patient?
still lots of stuff out there. There's, the prices are going up a bit. Like even Famicoms, they probably doubled in the junk Famicom prices probably doubled
But
from
so is
before because
everything.
of how
I
weak the
mean,
yen was. Yeah. I
well,
mean, the
bread
weak
and milk
yen.
cost more, you know, so it's like life's just getting more expensive.
Yeah. So, yeah, but they're still out there. I mean, there was a while there when tourism first started back up where like shelves were getting, wiped and stuff. But if you go outside of the city, outside of Akihabara, they still have plenty of games and things. And
Mm,
I see just, Famicom boxed games and things are definitely more expensive. Just everything's more expensive. I mean, there's still a lot of stuff. There's still a lot of stuff around. So
mm, mm,
I wouldn't say there's nothing left. There's still plenty to see. There's still plenty of stuff. So it's not like I don't think it's leaving. I mean, a lot of people make the claim that, the games are leaving Japan, which, some people don't like it. Some people don't really, I mean, they're fine with that. But I
mm,
was talking to a Japanese game collector the other day and he was like, yeah, I think it's good for Japan that, foreigners are into the games and they take them
mm,
home to their countries. That doesn't bother me.
mm.
But as far as having games, there's still lots of games. There's still lots of junk. I haven't, I mean, getting the good junk, I guess getting the best deals that were there 5 years ago, there are not as much of those anymore. But I mean,
Mm,
that's just what happens as time goes by. The good
mm,
deals get taken. And it's not that there's not good deals anymore, but it's harder to find the same
mm,
thing that you're used to finding before, but they're still
mm,
there. I mean, I still see them. I'm still seeing Famicoms in the junk, which is good. Good for me.
mm. I mean, when you look at if someone like myself, and I have a few friends that have been back over since COVID, and a buddy of mine brought me back my Core Graphics too. It was sort of like one of the consoles I thought, oh, I'll never get a PC engine. That just seems so impossible. And he brought me back the nice grey one in the box, and just bloody brilliant. I think it was like $220 Australian. You know, like it just, and you just don't really, that over here. If you saw that on a shelf in an Australian retro gaming store, you'd probably be
Sorry, you're
looking
kind of
like,
you're kind of cutting out on me. I can't hear
oh,
your
sorry,
audio's cutting in and out. But I'm guessing you just said that you got the core graphics for like
yeah,
20
the grey one, yep,
$20. Yeah,
yeah, in a box for about $220 Australian. And
yeah.
if you saw that on a shelf here in Australia, you'd probably be paying $400 to $500. So
Yeah, it always doubles. Anything that
yeah,
you ship from here to another country, it's always going to be double. In the States, it's the same thing. Like whatever you buy here, it's double that
yeah,
in the States. So yeah,
yeah. And it's the rarity. And that's why anybody that's into retro gaming in this country that goes to Japan just says, it's just so insane. I didn't know what to buy. I walked into the
right.
first store and they all say, just don't buy anything in the first store. Just walk around and just start to understand
Yeah,
the abundance.
yeah,
There's no way there's not plenty. And there's no way that having them go somewhere else to another country, because I mean, it's Japanese people that are giving up the games, anybody that's been in Japan collecting themselves for the last 30 years has got to have almost everything because it's been so cheap for them. So to sort of be upset that it's all moving overseas, it seems fruitless because the stuff's just going to get like junked eventually when they can't sell. They can't infinitely fill their shelves. You know, there's not enough scruffies to kind of clean out the shelves for them, you know, and make use of it. Yeah. Do you find that the SNES or the Super Famicom is still common? Because I mean, the original Famicom seems to be your real, I guess, love. It's what you seem to sort of pick up the most. Maybe the simplicity and just the aesthetics of it. But Super Famicom, is that still a thing?
Yeah, Super Famicom is still a thing. I think Super Famicom is. I think they made way more Super Famicoms than they did Famicoms. I don't know if that's a fact or not, but you see them more on the shelf, the Super Famicom's, and you could still find them for. I mean, if you go to certain places, they might be exorbitantly priced, but if you're coming from overseas and you see them, I mean, I'm sure people are gonna think it's a great deal and buy them. So I mean, to each his own. Whatever you want, and you're only here for a short time, so
that's right.
If you don't live here and you just want to get some stuff, there's definitely plenty. I mean, Super Famicoms are if you're a junk refurbishing person, especially, like you can still find really good prices on Super Famicoms. I mean, you go to the junk section and you can get them for like 300 to 300 to 500 yen. Some are going up more like 1,000 yen, but like you can still find them pretty cheap. I mean, the yellowed ones, the ones that might have chips in them or whatever. I mean, sometimes I find really clean looking ones in the junk too. So it's just they have so much stuff that they can't test it all and they can't put it all out front shelf. So whatever they get, they just want to move it so it goes straight to the junk, and somebody like me comes along, grabs it.
So there must still be a big market locally then. It can't just be a bunch of scruffies and kid shurikens that are hanging around. Like, these stores are extensive. They got a lot of stock. There must still be, because we Westerners get the impression that the only people that are really interested in it is Westerners, because it's the Japanese folk that are giving it all away and trying to sell it. So there must still be a market and interest locally.
Yeah, there's still Japanese collectors. I mean, I don't know if you know, but it's kind of like secondhand goods has a negative connotation here in Japan. Like everything here has its spirit or whatever, kind of a way of thinking.
Right.
So a lot of people don't like to buy secondhand goods. Maybe the younger generation is more into that sort of thing. But I mean, yeah, people my age, like it's very shun upon to like be buying a bunch of junk and stuff. And
right.
But yeah, there are game collectors out there, and I see other Japanese Instagrammers doing the same thing that I do. They go grab junk and they fix it up, and they're excited about it, that's the whole point.
They take it to a boot sale.
You enjoy. I don't know where they sell it, but like I just see other Instagram people that do stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I assume they take it to a boot sale, and some 21-year-old Westerner just buys it, and all of a sudden they're like, "This is fantastic!" And the circle of life goes on and on. Sort of thing. Yeah. Do you collect? Like, as in, you know the meaning of the word collect. Like, do you collect, or you just kind of constantly read?
I collect. I mean, I just hoard is more.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Collecting is collecting is just hoarding, with some sort of intentional catalog.
Right. I mean, I don't. The things that interest me, I grab, and like I said, my shelf space is very limited. I'm trying to get rid of some stuff, but yeah, I guess you could say I collect. I mean, I'm trying to be more specific about what I collect. Before the past few years, it's just been like, oh, I don't have that. Let me have that. I don't have that. So it's like thinning out your wants and your needs. So
yeah, I guess the beauty of cartridges is you can fit sort of 50 in a kind of double shoebox, type thing. So you can kind of just go and flick through, and I assume you have like one or two shelves that you can kind of rotate things through. Like I saw on Instagram, and I'm assuming you picked up that Voltron figure.
No, I didn't pick that up, but
Ah,
that was just something I was very in awe of because Voltron is such an iconic and classic character for me and
mm,
the people that I grew up with. So that was just really, really cool. Um,
yeah,
I
yeah.
love
Likewise.
Voltron.
Actually, I have. What have I got? A friend of mine a while ago gave me these like plastic model kits. Yeah, there's the Black Lion.
Oh, nice.
But it's all four or five of them, and then yeah, kind of they combine and everything. They're from Japan. I don't know where he got them from. He said them for ages, and I was a bit down,
Yeah,
so he gave me them. And I haven't made the blue one yet, you know. But yeah, I'm the
they're
same. He's
nice.
got this.
Japan makes some nice models.
Yeah, they
Models.
do. I
Yeah,
spent a few years in Gunpla, and
me too.
it was nice. It was right
Yeah,
when we went to Japan, so I went to to the base and all the things. And when we went, we were there for 14 days. We spent about a few days in Osaka, and then about 4 days in Tokyo, and then out to
yeah,
the snow a bit, and then back. But when we were in Tokyo, my wife and daughter and I would like do all the things around the city, and then I'd
yeah.
put them to bed at about 8 because they'd be toast, and then I would catch a train into Akihabara, and I had
There
this
you go.
list on my phone of all these like sort of deep dark Gunpla source stores, and I'd be out till 11 o'clock at night trying to find this
Oh,
kit and that kit, and it was really good. Like we came back with a lot of when we walked on the plane to come home. My daughter and my wife both had two bags each of kits and things, and I still owe for that. But yeah, it was pretty. I think what astounded me the most was kind of being out that time of night,
yeah,
10:30 at night, and I was always scoping out like the little, just like a room full of gashapon machines, the balls with the
yeah,
coins, and
yeah,
just sort of looking in and seeing this like 45-year-old man, in a suit with his briefcase buying gashapon at like 10:30 at night, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you here? Or like a rob of them at 10:30 eating noodles in a little noodle shop.
yeah,
That aspect of the culture of just these kind of single, I think, salarymen
yeah,
finishing their 15-hour days in an office. Um,
yeah,
it was kind of crazy. It was kind of crazy. And at that time,
yeah.
I had no concept. I wasn't really looking for retro gaming at all. And it's
Right.
Japan's like that. You can go so deep on one aspect.
Into
Like if you
one
just
thing.
went,
Yeah.
yeah, if you just went car culture, like 3 weeks wouldn't be enough to just go and see all the
Right.
sites.
Yeah.
Um, that's one thing about Japan is and I find like Japan, so it's like when you eat in Japan, you just eat. You are doing it.
Yeah.
You're focused on
Yeah.
eating, and when you're done eating, you stop eating and you do
Right.
something else, and then you
Right.
focus on that. Whereas in Australia, we tend to be you're just doing everything at once, and you're just making a bloody mess of everything, and it can be frustrating, sort of thing. Um, have you been back to the US like much in the time you've sort of established yourself full time in Japan?
At first, when I first came, I used to go back every year, but once you get married, it's difficult to, take the journey every year. So I
Yeah,
went back a couple of years ago, maybe 2018 was the last time. And
yeah,
then, Corona hit
yeah,
and that really canceled all plans to go back. And
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and it,
once I think, it's when I went back, that was right when I started getting into the whole retro game thing, and I bought a bunch of fixed them up, and I just kind of gave them to my friends as kind of these, you know,
yeah, yeah,
omiyage presents or whatever
yeah,
souvenirs. So
yeah. You just hand them out, and you're like, okay, this you won't see me ever again. Goodbye now.
yeah,
Mm,
basically. So
yeah,
yeah, that was the last time I went there. So
yeah,
I'd
okay.
like to go back and I'd like to pick up a original NES. I still don't have one. I haven't had one since I was a kid. So that would be one thing I'd like to get from the US as far as games are
Hmm,
considered.
hmm.
Yeah.
That's such a bizarre concept that you haven't had one for so long.
It is.
Um,
I don't know what I might have given it away. But
mm,
one thing I do own my Super Famicom, and when I went back on that trip, I a bunch of my stuff was at my relative's house, and I went through all my Star Wars stuff and I organized it, and then I went through all my game stuff and I organized it, and I brought a bunch of the game stuff back because I was so into games, and
Mm.
I had my original Super Famicom in the box. And back in
As in
those
like,
days,
yeah,
I was heavy Star Wars collector,
yeah,
Gundam model kit collector. So at that point, I knew you got to keep it in the box. And I was like,
yeah,
I had everything in there. And it's weird because my Super Famicom or my SNES or whatever, it yellowed. Like it's been in the box, but it
yeah,
yellowed.
right.
And just
No
being in the
UV light at
box, so
all.
weird. No, it's been in the
Mm.
box for, I don't know, 20 years or more,
Mm.
and it
Mm.
yelled. So I don't think it has to do with the tobacco. Like everybody thinks it's nicotine, but I really think
Mm.
it's just the plastic aging.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
weird.
that's crazy.
Not all parts melt, not all parts turn yellow. It's just like certain parts. So it's kind of
Yeah,
strange.
yeah. You see those often, and it kind of looks like an old, like an old car that's got like a different bonnet and different
Right.
doors. Because and you always
Yeah.
think, oh, well, someone's taken the best of this one and the best of that one and slapped it together.
Yeah.
But I guess when they were made in factory, a percentage of this in the chemical that made that panel and the percentage of chemical in the plastic that made the main panel and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder if it was the early years that actually kind of triggered the effect, and then
Right.
once it had sort of started happening when it sat in the box, it's
Right.
like, well, that kind of chemical breakdown is done from then on.
Right.
But yeah, you do assume that everyone you see that's bright yellow is just in a room where, like, how could they see the TV?
Right.
There must have been so much cigarette smoke in the room.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
I know Japan has a lot of cigarette smoke, but
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, Scruffy Looking RGB, Scruffy Looking Nerve Herder. Anybody who knows knows. So, your Star Wars collection, when you went back and had a look, um,
yeah.
were you already into kind of like stuff carded and stuff in boxes, or did you just happen to have a bunch?
Yeah, I'd say when I was like 10 or 12 is when I really got into like collecting Star Wars stuff. And that's when I got the thing to like keep it in the box and all that. So
Really? As a
all, quite a
10-year-old, you were
few.
keeping figures on card.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty wild, hey?
And so it was because at that time, Star Wars was already, it was already past its prime and nobody
Right,
was into Star Wars. And that was way in between all, it was like after Return of the Jedi, like 10 years
right,
after Return of the Jedi. And no, you couldn't find Star Wars toys anywhere. This is where you'd find them at like the collectors shops and like at the recycle shops. And so we'd go in and we'd see, like a carded, Luke or Leia, and it was like $50 or like $30 or
wow,
something like that, right? And you go, well, that's a lot of money. I'm not going to pay that.
sure is.
So at that time, you know what I'm saying? But now it's like $2,000 or something like that.
Yeah, now that's a lot of money. Yeah. Did you happen to get anything graded?
I've never got anything graded, but I do still have quite a few carded ones and loose ones. I
Mm,
was mostly a loose collector, but although I've looked for deals on carded ones, and anytime I found like a carded for what I thought was a good deal, I could get some. I'd say
mm,
about 10,
mm,
10 carded
mm,
figures. Not actually, I
mm.
guess not that many, but
Yeah, Japan has a pretty unique kind of Star Wars toy scene, doesn't it? I've never really quite. I've tried to look into it. I've never really understood it. It's like everything Japanese. It's always just a little bit like Transformers is the same. There's this sort of slight, just off kilter from what Western Transformers or Western Star Wars looks like. Um,
yeah.
do you agree? And are you able to kind of like describe what the differences really are?
As far as popularity wise, I don't think Star Wars in a whole is as popular in Japan as it is in other parts of the world. So
Yeah,
that's one thing.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, as far as Transformers and things like that, I mean, I loved Transformers as a kid, but I couldn't say as far as how the Japanese think of Transformers. But as far as Star Wars, they're like our generation of people are very. There's still a lot of Star Wars fans out there, And it's interesting because Disney has it now, so there's a lot of young kids that know about Star Wars, but of course, they're coming at it from a different angle.
If you still call it Star Wars, don't start me. That's fine.
You still call it Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's different. It's definitely not as big, and it's definitely, because George Lucas, all his idea, a lot of his ideas came from the samurai and Akira Kurosawa.
I was about to say exactly the same thing. I mean, we invented samurais, so your lighty sword dudes are kind of like, it's kind of cute. Yeah, we've been doing that for a couple of thousand years.
Kind of thing of, I don't know, kind of like a fake kind of samurai type episode might have been the attitude, but I'm not completely sure. I know a few heavy Star Wars collectors that are Japanese, and one of them owns a shop in Nakano Broadway. It's like all Star Wars vintage shop. It's called Starcase. I don't know if you ever come to, you should check it out.
Yeah, sure.
He's just got everything, and he's been collecting for as long as I have. It's his own shop, and he just has so many cool things to look at. But like I'd say, up until just before Disney bought out Star Wars, like you could get pretty good deals on vintage Star Wars toys here at that point, because I mean the popularity was not there. I mean, I remember buying carded figures online here through the Japanese Yahoo auctions for really, really cheap compared to what they go for on eBay. And I mean, those days are gone, but there was that time, like it was just, there was no, like in America, because of the prequels. I came here right at the end of the prequels, like the third one that came out. I came to Japan, and it was, it was hyped over here. They had toys and things, but the original Star Wars toys and things, like from like 2014 on, started increasing in price, of course. But before that trend, between 2005 and 2013, was like the time to buy Star Wars toy, like vintage Star Wars toys in Japan, because they were so much less, cost so much less than they did in the States. So they're definitely less popular, to put a quick end to that part.
If you look at them just as toys, though, you look at like everything up to, say, Return of the Jedi. If you look at whatever, say, even a Hoth Han Solo, on the back of the noisy camel thing, and you look at that as a toy compared to what Japan was providing their children. Like, it's a pretty rudimentary, crappy kind of no elbows, straight knees, maybe a lightsaber, a pistol, that sort of stuff. So you can understand why just Japanese children are like, meh, like we've got Power Rangers and all sorts of other, Gundam and
I mean,
so much other stuff.
Star Wars was, I don't remember, I never knew of Gundam during Return of the Jedi days. So if I had Gundam when I was a kid, I definitely would have been all into that. I mean, we had Voltron. That was about the closest to Voltron.
Voltron was sick. Yeah,
Robotech and all that stuff. Definitely a lot of cool toys. Japan has from way back, from after the war. Definitely.
As in after like World War II, that sort of toy stuff.
After World War II is where that's where the Japan toy market was born, and where it just grew into this insane thing of what it is today.
Well, I guess they could use the oil for plastic and make cool things instead of,
I think they used a lot of old steel and stuff that was used from the war, like war scrap and stuff, to make the first toys. So the guy that created the Game Boy, he worked for Nintendo just as a kind of a sort of, I think, a machinist, kind of all-round kind of guy. And he made some sort of I think it was like a game where you kind of shot like an arrow at a can or something, but he made it from scraps down in the workshop. And he's like, or it was like an extendy grabber kind of hand thing or something. And they were like, that's pretty good. There's a gunpei. And then before you know it, he's like, I've got other ideas. He's this kind of Japanese Nikola Tesla, just sort of buried in a basement, fixing, random infrastructure. Before you know it, he's like, so I've got this idea. The idea of the Game Boy always astounds me, because it doesn't
it doesn't look like a toy, and the whole concept was that it kind of looked almost like a calculator, like a piece of office equipment, and that was the whole
Right.
guise, was you could kind of take it on a train and not look
Right.
like you could be a grown adult with this thing on a train and not look like I'm a man with a toy kind of thing, So
Right.
those aspects of Japanese culture, and then when you kind of get into the 90s, or what you see of the 90s, what you remember, it's
Yeah.
like toys everywhere. Like you said, it's just
Right.
after that, it just went bonkers. And it's like, no, I'm a grown adult that buys a new Gunpla every Thursday night when I get paid. I'll just go home and
Right.
snap it up while I'm watching serials, so
Right.
they just unleashed and just
Right.
let the inner child go bonkers after that.
Right. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. All right. Well, look, I appreciate your time,
Yeah. No problem.
and I really do like. It's not until because Instagram, you can get a little like swipe, 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 and it's not chronological. It's algorithmic, so it's not until you
Right.
go into someone's channel or someone's Instagram profile and you actually flick through and you really start to see what someone's doing. And when I was just sitting here looking at yours, just flicking through, and it's a real spectacle into what retro gaming in Japan really is. Some people just sort of focus on this angle or that angle, but your Instagram, it's a good spread of games, consoles. You get out in the arcades a bit, and you show
Yeah.
that if you put the work in and have a little look around, there's still plenty to be got. And I think, like you said before, if you're visiting, sure, you could try and get the best of something and spend this
Yeah.
much money on that. But if you've only
Right.
got 10 days in Tokyo, and
Yeah.
if you see something that you like, and it's good catch, no one
Right.
saw that, but you just caught something falling out of the sky. You just grab what you want for the right price. You're going to be happy. I think that's really
Yeah.
sound
Yeah. As long
advice.
as if you're happy with it, I mean, you can
Mm,
always look for a better deal, but you don't always have that time, Same with me. I go and I look at stuff and I'll be at a shop for an hour or two and I'll be like, have I just spent all my time deciding whether the yellow Famicom or the Famicom with the scratch, which one to buy?
Yeah,
So it's like, where you spend your time.
yeah,
It's kind
yeah.
of important.
That's right. If you kind of like on average sort of $30 an hour or something, if that's your salary, you go, well,
Yeah.
I've just spent $60 to save $12, sort of thing.
I spent 60 to save like, $5 or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess we might just finish up on, and you've sort of hit it pretty hard already and answered all the questions, but, what is your really sound advice on, I guess, areas like you land in Tokyo and you're like, tomorrow I'm hitting the town. And you don't have to name like specific stores or anything because you cover
Yeah.
them all. Where would you go? Like, honestly, based on what we
So
just
if
said.
you have time, I would say definitely look, don't buy anything yet, but just look around Akihabara to see what there is because they have everything. Everything's there.
Mm.
So if you just look and then kind of get an idea of price, and then
Mm-hmm.
if you have the time to go a little bit further out, maybe to like Yokohama or something like that, or just on the outskirts of Tokyo. Even within Tokyo, if you found like a random art off or a random book off, just go in and check out what they have because you'll definitely see a difference in prices, even within the city. So if you want to save and you have a little bit of time, a little bit more than average time to look around, definitely look around. But if you have no time, I mean, Akihabara is a good place to go unless you know like a place that you can reach. Like I recently went to Shin. What did I go to Shin for? I went to Shizuoka. There's a stop. It's down south in Shizuoka Prefecture. It's Shizuoka City, and there's a big like this flagship store Suruga, and that place was probably the best place I've seen so far of selection. You just had everything, and Surugaya kind of has the better prices out of all the stores, in my opinion, so far. I mean, unless you're talking about like hard off and stuff, but if you're talking about like a a proper collector hobby type store.
Right.
That's kind of Akihabara-ish. It has everything. That shop had everything and huge selection from computer games to old stock games to every system. So some place like that, if you decide you find there's this place that has all that, either a place like that or Akihabara would be a good place to go.
Cool.
If you don't have a lot of time, just go to Akihabara and get what you want.
Yep.
But it's always worth to take a look around if you have more time.
And you're there for more than just picking up games and consoles. You know, you don't know what little food place you might find tucked in beside a train station.
There's I mean, especially if it's your first time, just explore. Go wherever. I mean, it doesn't even have to be Akihabara. If you like games or whatever, just find a book off or art off somewhere. Any recycle shop that you might know of, just check it out. You'll definitely have a good time.
I think most people will say that it doesn't really matter where you're from, but when you kind of get there, you're so hyped that they're big days wandering around Tokyo with all these goals and, expectations met, and then plus you're getting more than you expected sort of thing. So I think my advice would be you definitely need to kind of pace yourself a bit. And like you said, just take a few days to just relax into it before soak it in. That's right. It costs you that much money to get there. And obviously, and I'll put all the links to your Instagram and YouTube. And obviously, anybody that's sort of wondering can just go to your YouTube and see a few of your most recent hunts and go, and they could just message you and say, hey, where was this one? And you'll probably go, this one was here. And, you can catch a train there. Just use Google Maps and open your wallet. And have a good time.
I have a few videos.
Yeah, you do. You do.
So,
It's good. It's good. It's good. It's honest videos. There are some people that want to just show you just bits, just the highlights. And game hunting isn't highlights. It's kind of flicking through. And Kid Shuriken does it all the time. He's like, yeah, 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 yeah. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. And it's nice to see people just honestly hunting as opposed to every time I get off a train and I go to a hard off, I find this super rare thing. It's like, no, you don't. You don't. Just you don't. So appreciate the honesty. Scruffy, thanks for your time. And I really appreciate you sharing your experiences, and I wish you all the luck in your hunting. I tried not to fanboy too much. We've been chatting for a while, so it kind of like it's settled down a bit, but I really appreciate your content. It's nice to, just like I said, sometimes you find someone's profile and you just kind of flick through and it's a little window into the culture, and yours definitely provides that.
No, I appreciate it. And I appreciate having the chat and getting to talk about nostalgic stuff. Nobody at home here wants to talk to me about this stuff. So it's very nice to have a friend to chat at and talk about the old days, the good old days.
I'll talk to you anytime.
I enjoyed it.
That's 2/3 of the reason why I do this podcast, because I don't know anybody. I've got a couple of friends, but when you're adults, it's hard to get together. But so I can just talk to people about retro gaming stuff. And every time I do the podcast with someone, I look at all my consoles and I spend like the next week and a half playing games. So it's a circle of life that keeps me coming back. And I play a game and then I think, what's this guy? So all right, buddy.
Sure.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch, and I'll be thumbing up all your stuff there. That's great. All right, mate. See ya.
All right, take care.